I can't get a 2-day Amazon package. It's 3 or 4 or 5 days,
Oh, you
even with
poor
the hub
dear.
center. I know, right?
Gotta plan
Poor
ahead.
me, poor me. But the thing is like that's what drones can solve.
Mhm.
Now, that's the power that they bring. That's the value that they bring to citizens that live in these states and in these regions.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for watching and listening to the Props Clear podcast. I'm your host, Jillian Angeline. We're talking all about drones and about improving public perception surrounding the unmanned aircraft industry. These episodes are for informational, educational, and entertainment purposes only, and none of this constitutes legal advice. If you've been enjoying the content so far, be sure to click subscribe on my YouTube channel and follow on podcast platforms. Fasten your seatbelts and let's get started. Today's guest is Erin Roesler. She's the Deputy Executive Director of the Northern Plains UAS Test Site. So, Erin, thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited to talk with you. I had heard you speak at the Commercial UAV Expo, and you seemed like such an interesting, fascinating person, let alone someone who is so excited and passionate about UAS and getting it out to the world and kind of creating this roadmap in the world, which is so incredible. First of all, you are Deputy Executive Director of the Northern Plains UAS Test Site. There are 7 of these test sites around the country. One of them is in North Dakota. Tell me about what it's like to be working day in and day out in one of these test sites.
Yeah, so working at a test site every day is different, and I think that's what keeps me here, keeps it very exciting. So here in North Dakota, we say, yeah, we're one of 7 federal test sites, which astonishingly now is 10 years that the test site program has been in existence, a decade, right?
I
So we
was
should,
surprised when I heard that stat.
right?
That surprised me. Yes.
So we should have this thing solved by now, right?
Yeah.
We should be done. We should be done. But anyone that's in the industry knows we are far from that, and that's what keeps every day is very interesting and very exciting. And when the test site program started, North Dakota really took a different approach of
Hmm.
if we're going to truly integrate drones into the national airspace, we have to make sure that we test and we prove out use cases and solve problems for industry and research and entities um, that's not segregated from the
Hmm.
rest of airspace. So we had an opportunity to set up like restricted areas or things like that at the conception of the test site, and North Dakota never took that approach. We looked at it as when problems came to us, we really took the time to understand, well, what's your end state goal? Where do you want to operate? You want to operate in an urban environment. You want to operate in a rural
Hmm.
area. You want to operate in congested airspace environment or wide open airspace,
Hmm.
and let's go test and prove it out there, because then your solution is scalable. So the Northern Plains UAS Test Site has actually done operations in 17 different states. So while we're located here in North
Oh,
Dakota,
wow.
we've done a lot across the country in a wide variety of areas, because we're trying to, again, truly integrate UAS into the national airspace, not create these segregated pockets.
On the website, it says we can come to you.
Bingo,
And
exactly.
that's what took me by surprise when I was doing my research because I'm like, wait a second, what are they talking about? We can come to you.
Yeah, I
So I
mean,
guess you're taking the framework that you have in North Dakota and you can apply it to companies that may not necessarily have the means or the ability to get to.
right. Well, so, okay, a great example. We worked with a company that wanted to do offshore deliveries
Hmm.
to ships. So ships would come into port. They don't always time, sometimes our ports are a little crowded lately. So they couldn't always get right into port, but they'd still need to get deliveries out to the ships.
Hmm.
So this drone company came in and like, we have a great idea. We think we can do, a drone delivery out to these ships, drop it on at the deck of the ship, and then keep on going our merry way. Well, we don't exactly have any oceans here in North
No.
Dakota to test that
No.
out. But it's a very different use case. So, okay, let's test that right in that environment. Let's build the safety case and the rationale and the mitigations
Hmm.
to prove out that this can be an effective use case for drones in the airspace. So that's what we did. It was down in New Orleans. We did some work out in California with that
Wow.
company and really built the safety case that worked for their mission set. And so now they're doing their operations, right? So that's what we mean when we have a solution. We have the framework. We work with them because the federal regulations are the federal regulations, and we just
Hmm.
figure out where we can apply those and figure out a use case for them.
Because it's not just about, hey, we can provide the property. This is
Right.
about creating a full on solution so that someone can go from start to finish without needing any, any help. That's, once they're working with you, they're set. They have their protocols. They have their SOPs in place.
Right, exactly, and that's exactly what we're trying to achieve and deliver to our clients. Not only again on the consulting basis, but a lot of the work that we do is in the research realm as well. So
Hmm.
working with a lot of DoD entities as well as NASA. We've done a lot of NASA UTM work, so unmanned traffic management of trying to find the next generation of once all these drones do get into the airspace, how do we manage them in some areas? Because that's going to
Hmm.
be a necessity. And because we have a wide area of experience, not just in North Dakota, test site, a geographically confined thing, we can bring a lot of scenarios to that testing environment. And so we've been really wonderful partners working with NASA on this because we know firsthand, hey, we got clients out there that want to go do offshore deliveries. We have clients that want to do agricultural applications. We all of them, and you bring those into the scenario, and you're really able to test like concepts like unmanned traffic management in much more robust fashion because you're bringing those real use cases into it.
When I heard you first speak at the Commercial UAV Expo in Las Vegas, I was so excited to hear from you. And one of the things I really liked is I hadn't started my podcast yet, but now my goal is improving public perception around UAS. You talked about the importance of the town halls in North Dakota to bring the public in, to get them interested in knowing about the importance of safety and privacy and all of those things. Are you still doing that? And do you think that still is a pinnacle of moving forward?
Yeah, so again, integration is so much more than just policy and testing and research. It definitely is that outreach and that education component. And so the test site is very dedicated to doing that. We still do town halls or we still do some community outreach very specifically when there's operations that are going to occur that we know are going to be that are going to hit the media lines. So, for example, here in Grand Forks, North Dakota,
Hmm.
our river flows north. So, in about a month here, it's going to flood. It floods
Hmm.
every year. Sometimes, it's a minor flood season, but sometimes it's upwards of 50 feet, which
Snow
is
melt, I assume, is what
yes,
that's flooding.
right,
Yes,
yes.
exactly.
But so as part of the flood mitigation and flood protection, we deploy drones and we use them in those efforts because they're very useful tools to help keep the public safe, help keep the city safe in those environments. So great, that means you're now flying a drone, downtown city environment. It's going to get spotted. It's going to get seen. People are going to ask questions, and in fact,
Hmm.
you're flying these a lot of times in neighborhoods in small communities, and so you reach out to those communities. To your point, we've had town halls. We've held a town hall and told them, okay, very particularly, there's an area that we know is going to flood. It's going to be flooding your backyards. So we
Hmm.
want to fly a drone there to ensure that we can watch that and monitor it and keep you guys safe. And the reality is, they go, okay, thanks. Yeah, because they recognize the benefit it brings to them as citizens, and that's wonderful. I think we're really lucky in North Dakota that, generally speaking, we have a really great community buy-in. That this
Wow.
technology can really help people, and I think partially that comes from we have a low population density. They know that when emergencies happen, we need to leverage technology because we don't have the manpower to really step up and help as much. So,
Hmm.
you know, drones and autonomy becomes a workforce multiplier. It means we can keep people safe better, and so there's really good buy-in that way. Um, but to
Wow.
your point of what other research, what other outreach do we do? I think our traditional aviation communities are the biggest areas we need to do outreach to.
That was an interesting point that you raised because I hadn't thought of it that way. In my mind, my goal with the show is to talk to people who don't know a thing about drones. think about quadcopters. They haven't seen one fly. Maybe they've seen one fly by and gone, what the heck is going on there? And to be able to teach them about airspace and the importance of what's being done to help save lives and to do work. But your analysis kind of took me by surprise, and I'd love to hear your take. You're saying that traditional aviation communities are who really need the education about why drones are important, correct?
Right. Well, so rewind the clock. When AVSI pushed out one of their first economic reports. I think around 2013, maybe it was like even 2011. Uh, they advertised in there that, or their analysis at that time showed that 90% of the drone market was going to be in precision agriculture and public safety. And to a traditional aviation community, especially aerial applicators, that means you're going to take my job away. Now, fast forward, okay, well, you keep talking about the autonomy, being able to replace a pilot or maybe at least removes one pilot from the flight deck, those type of scenarios. And there's concern, there's worry. You also saw the headlines. Not too long ago, there's an Audi commercial that looked like Alfred Hitchcock, The Birds, with drones darkening the skies and taking over and chasing people, and it was pure terror and chaos. But
Oh my gosh.
again, I'm a pilot, right? So I'm flying in this airspace. That is my worst enemy now, because that means when I'm in the airplane, I'm at risk. My life is at risk. The drone doesn't have anyone on board. They can do whatever they want. So what is the UAS community's skin in the game, so to speak? My skin in the game when I'm flying is my life, but that doesn't get reciprocated. That's all the perception, right? That's the perception people have.
Yeah.
And so how do you fight that? How do you combat that? And I think that's the education outreach that's missing, specifically for those communities, is saying, okay, let's acknowledge 10 years ago, we were wrong. We are not taking away anyone's jobs, especially in precision agriculture. The reality today is drastically different. So let's have that outreach. Let's talk about like what is the reality? What applications are drones actually providing? And what are we doing to ensure that when they are integrated into the airspace, it's not taking away your airspace? There's a way to do this cooperatively. There's a way to do this safely. And the people that are in the airspace, not only from traditional aviation, but from the UAS communities, they're very serious about, safety and how they're approaching this, because it is their professional business. And so let's acknowledge that. Let's not think of this as, cowboys of, the Wild West and everyone's, doing what they want to do. No, that's not the case here.
And I think it might also be adding jobs too, or adding a
It
new
is.
possibility of jobs, because people can now learn how to fly these on the ground. They can be safer by sitting with the controls, right?
That's definitely it. And I would say, I take it one step further. There's a portion of the aviation community that, long to be pilots, that for one reason or another, that's not a valid pathway. Cost. It's very expensive to be a traditional pilot.
Absolutely.
Medical requirements.
You have a commercial pilot certificate. You probably know that.
Yes, right? It's very costly. And then on top of that, if I have anything happen to me medically, that might no longer be a career path for me. And that's a huge risk. But if you can open up this other sector of aviation where you're still flying, you're on the ground, but there's still so many elements of this that is thrilling, that you're able to utilize, an aircraft to bring a service and a value to, the world, right? That I can still do that. It doesn't matter if I lost my medical. It doesn't matter if I couldn't afford to be a commercial pilot. There's an opportunity to be more inclusive with this sector of aviation that traditional aviation can't provide.
And that just warms my heart, because that means that people can really, it opens the doors to so many more people. to be able to get a taste of what it feels like to get behind controls and fly something. Let's talk a little bit about Vantis. You're wearing the shirt.
Yeah.
We're talking about it as, you would explain it to me before we started recording as a product. What I love is in this one video where it does show, it kind of talks about how instead of having different roadways and pathways, you've got the trucks on one and the cars on the other, and then you've got the planes on the other. This is kind of allowing this specific roadmap to be open and allow every drone almost to have communication with each other or with a network that's set up somehow so that it's a lot more collaborative, and you can allow for something like interstate commerce, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So in UAS, we have a lot of barriers. A lot of barriers we got to solve, right? That's why the test site is now 10 years old. But in addition to some of those barriers, or especially the big barriers of policy and regulation, which we often point to, one of the other barriers that we have is the lack of shared infrastructure. To your point of the rail system and the roadway system, if I'm we have it in traditional aviation, right? We have shared infrastructure for traditional aviation. If I'm, Delta Airlines, I don't have to build out my own airports. I get to utilize the international airports, Minneapolis International Airport, or here in Grand Forks, I'll land at the Mark Andrews International Airport. That's not a Delta airport. That's not a United airport, right?
Exactly.
They
Thank
don't have
goodness,
that.
because that would
Right.
be really complicated.
Well, the burden and the barriers to entry would be massive.
Yeah.
But that's what exists for UAS today. If I am, the North Dakota Department of Transportation, and I want to fly my drone along a highway and do a beyond visual line of sight flight, right? So whether I'm flying 5, 50, or 500 miles, I have to build out the network that supports my little drone to fly that distance. And then if I can actually fly that far, I need to make sure I now have, some sort of surveillance to ensure that I'm not going to hit anything else in the airspace. Okay, great. So now I've built out, radios. I've built out some surveillance sensors along my highway. I tie it all together through a backhaul data network, and now I can fly beyond visual line of sight. Wonderful. Well, right next to that is probably a railroad, right? So I'm now BNSF. I have to do the same thing. I have to build up my own radios, my own network, my own sensors, tie it all together. Awesome. Well, now I'm Excel Energy, and I'm just a few hundred feet away from that railroad and that highway, and I'm running in parallel. I'm doing the same thing. So you have 3 sets of infrastructure, privately owned infrastructure, within a few hundred feet of each other, and that doesn't scale. It just doesn't. So what Vantis recognized that problem, and I should say the test site recognized that problem. North Dakota recognized that problem, and we recognized if we want to continue to maintain our leadership in UAS and in aerospace, we got to figure out how to solve shared infrastructure. So enter the statewide network, and that's what it was called at first. It was just called the statewide network. We started a competition of how we were going to solve and bring shared infrastructure for UAS. Well, very quickly we realized it was so much more than just infrastructure. It's the processes and the programs, it's outreach, it's education, it's demand generation. There's not a standard or a blueprint for how to build UAS infrastructure or deliver these services.
And you got to get other states on board, because if you want to be able to spread from North Dakota to Minnesota to South Dakota to, Montana, you're going to have to lay these, lay the pipes of this, over a long period of time, and have every single state on board. You can send someone a Giphy or something like that on an iPhone to an Android. It won't maybe be in the best quality on the Android. You can comment on things on the iPhone with the little heart bubbles or something. It's not going to translate. So the biggest problem I would think for Vantis is it's a big push to make sure that everything is on this exact same network. Right. Or you're going to have in piecemeal all around the country.
Right. And so that's where it very quickly became branded Vantis. We recognize that it's not just a statewide network. It is so much more than that. Vantis represents that movement as well. And I would say it's the problem for a lot of other states isn't that the state to state intercommerce. It's actually in intrastate. You look at I'm going to pick on Oklahoma. Oklahoma's doing some really great work in this area,
They are.
but they
Choctaw Nation's doing great.
exactly. But that's the key, is that works for Choctaw Nation. Are they the entity that is, authorized to build it out for the entire state? So is the Choctaw development going to be compatible with, another entity within the state that is building out a system for their needs? So you really, North Dakota recognized that, and so that's where we instantly from day one took it as the statewide network. We are building this across the state. There's one entity, one authority, is one initiative that's made up of a lot of different companies that support Vantis. That's wonderful, because now we're going to at least solve that from border to border in the state. We got the blueprint, but now we also need to solve it for other states. And this is where we can help other states too. We have a lot of lessons learned as we've been working on this program that we
I
can
would hope so.
that you can take to Oklahoma, that we can take to Michigan, to Florida, to every other state that's working on this, and go, okay, we know what works, we know what doesn't work. Let's help each other, and then let's form up and let's join up, because, well, we also know the big barrier that we'll have once we solve the infrastructure will still be policy and regulation. And it'll still be at the federal government level. So how do we work together, band together to bring a solution and help the FAA in this challenge that we know will work and will scale across the entire country?
Where are you at right now in this really big goal?
Yeah.
In North Dakota?
Yeah. So we have some great development in the state of North Dakota. We have collaboration right now that we are engaged with conversations with about 12 other states at various stages, which they're pretty much at the let's do a study, let's do an analysis and figure out how we want to tackle this as a state, which is a really great place to start rather than just jumping in and buying infrastructure. Have a plan, build the plan, and then make sure that as that rolls out, you're thinking about all the things that you need to consider for the longevity of infrastructure in your state. Then let's also make sure that we all come to the table and are building, that compatibility element into the infrastructure, right? So you're not having the iPhone versus Android, type,
No.
that it works, right? Which is critical for aviation safety, that you have that. Where else are we at? We're working very closely with the FAA on some very critical programs and some initiatives that take what North Dakota is envisioning and really quickly enable us to scale nationwide. That's being recognized as a service provider, right?
That just got me excited.
Yeah, it's being recognized as a service provider. It's receiving exemptions and recognitions of the work that we're doing within Vantis. And then it's also, we're just about to embark on a pilot program with the FAA on receiving federal surveillance that could then enable, drone operations across the country. We've never done that before, right? The surveillance system that we have here works for traditional aviation, but we really strongly believe, and we've found ways to enable that for UAS and new entrants as well. So now let's test that out. Let's prove that out for, with the FAA.
Surveillance meaning like
radars.
Radar. I was going to ask, it's like either air traffic control, keeping an eye on everything, and radar, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So it's mostly radars, because the critical element of this is, look at North Dakota. There's the vast majority of the state is uncontrolled airspace. You look at other states, especially, through the middle of the country, that's the case. There's ways to solve this in urban environments.
The flyover states. Yeah.
But the aspect is, that's where drones really can have a very valuable impact. As we started off this conversation, right? We often say, like, here in North Dakota and in many other states in the Midwest, we don't have a last mile problem. We have a last 100-mile problem. I can't get a 2-day, I can't get a 2-day Amazon package. It's 3 or 4 or 5 days, even with the hub center. I know, right?
Gotta plan ahead.
For me. But the thing is like, that's what drones can solve.
Hmm.
Now, that's the power that they bring. That's the value that they bring to citizens that live in these states and in these regions. And so again, it comes back to what are the barriers to entry, for drones and for this industry as a whole. Yes, it's policy and regulation, but right behind that is infrastructure. And I think Vantis is definitely, solving that, not only for North Dakota, but we really truly believe it's the solution for the nation.
Are you creating your own equipment, or are you trying to like RFP that out to companies to try and get specific equipment? I mean, this is just based off the video that I saw. It looked like there was some cartoonish graphics, but they were graphics with like, something that looked like a cell tower or something along those lines. Are you and your team or Vantis, I assume it's not just you directly literally building something, but are is there a push to build?
Yeah. So first of all, it's a good thing that I'm not the one building it because I'm not the engineer. But no. So the way the state approached this was, again, we're a state entity. Infrastructure is not our wheelhouse, and especially aviation infrastructure is not our wheelhouse. So we started as a competition, and the biggest aviation giants came to the table with their solutions on how to build this out. And then we pitted them against each other and said, okay, well, which one of you can do it best? Let's figure that out and solve that out. And from there, we ultimately selected, Thales as our long-term system integrator. So Vantis is a strong partnership between the state of North Dakota and Thales, that is, does provide a lot of aviation infrastructure across the world. So we have enabled not only between our two entities, but we've tapped into existing infrastructure. Your cell towers, for example. If we were building out, those radio links, there's towers that already exist. I don't need to build a new tower. I just need to put my widget on top of the tower and now tap it into a network, which luckily there's already a fiber network that runs across the entire state. Now I just need to tap into that fiber network. So Vantis is built on leveraging existing infrastructure, tying it together, monitoring it, and adding in the safety parameters that are required for aviation grade and aviation safety, and then building that as the service that Vantis provides for UAS.
That would be a heck of a lot easier.
It is. It's a
Yeah.
little bit of a challenge, because you're trying to mix and match standards and protocols and
Yes.
compatibility, right? Let's go
But
back
you've
to that.
already got towers to work with. So that's
Exactly.
something to think about and would be a huge plus. I mean, I
Right.
see those all over New Jersey.
Exactly.
You'd
So
already got
that's
a bunch of them, so that would already help you.
and
And
a
then you
lot of
wouldn't need the
times
daisy chain observers just hanging out.
correct. And a lot of times, those towers and things are some of them are already state owned. So when you're talking about a state building out infrastructure, we're pretty fiscally responsible here in North Dakota. A little bit of conservative on our financial spending. So yeah, why would you spend money to build more towers when I don't know you already spent the money before?
Did you ever think you'd be part of this UAS test site in your life? Was that something you ever dreamed of?
No, no. My first dream in life is I wanted to be the first woman astronaut on Mars. But at some point along the way, I realized I
That
don't.
can still happen.
It, people keep saying that, but I don't know. I don't feel like I'm going to go and get two or three doctorate degrees to become an astronaut. Um,
Oh, okay.
but beyond that, I definitely decided that okay, if I'm not going to shoot for the stars, I'll at least land in the clouds. And so I went into aviation, pilot first and foremost, and uh, I loved that field. I love flying, love aviation, and now I get to be part of something that's the next generation, cutting edge aviation. And I don't I sometimes, I miss actually flying. I say I fly a desk now, but I know I'm enabling aviation for a wide majority of people and equipment and technology that, uh, yeah, I love what I do. So never saw myself landing here. Totally happy I did. Thrilled.
Do you fly drones?
I do. I do. I've flown everything from small to the largest I've flown is a Scan Eagle. So it's a 55-pound, but very capable aircraft. I love that aircraft.
Wow, that's awesome. Do you get the experience? I mean, I guess you're working on the test site, day in and day out. what is it like to see some of the companies come through and test their products? It must be kind of cool to be able to see it
Oh
come to
man.
reality.
Yeah. So I mean, it's more than just you get to see the craziest, wildest aircraft, that fly. I We've worked in the past with Kitty Hawk, which is now kind of dissolved, but they were developing AAM type aircraft to watch them go from a small prototype into something where it was ready for a passenger on board, and to start flying it around as your Jetson air taxi. That's thrilling. We also do some work in like counter UAS stuff, and there you get to see some really crazy inventions where, um, well, we got to see a drone being lasered out of the sky because, in order to enable, drones, we got to also ensure that, hey, if there's guys that are going to use this in the bad way too, we got to
Hmm.
keep our skies safe. So, yeah, it was this massive laser that just, was used for counter UAS technology. And so, yes, I've got to see some crazy stuff from the drone side, crazy stuff from other technology. It's a
Wow.
lot of fun.
Wow, that's amazing. I know UAvionics is working with you all as well. Can you talk about that and how they're being integrated into, the future of what you hope for?
Yeah, so UA Vanix is definitely one of our partners within Vantis, and we actually are still doing some testing with them, on the test site side for some FAA, research projects and initiatives. So I'll talk on the Vantis side first, right? So
Hmm.
UA Vanix provided some of the background, radio and the connectivity elements for the C2 side of Vantis,
Hmm.
and because they were in our partnership realm, they became an operator when we were, first testing and developing out the larger, Vantis system. So they still provide a really critical component or a subset component for the Vantis network and
Okay.
that side of things. But then they also received the first exemption to operate on Vantis. Now, they would say they're more of an operator out of necessity, but they're a great operator, and we were really happy to have them on board to test because, yeah, as a
And that's
avionics
for
manufacturer.
BVLOS, right?
Correct. Yes.
Because for anyone that may not know, that's beyond visual line of sight. So that means that being able to operate without a visual observer standing there watching it fly through the sky.
Exactly. Right. So they could launch their drone and fly for the battery life, right? Essentially, with the mitigations that we were able to enable with Vantage. So in essence, rather than the human eyeball being on site, on the aircraft and looking out the window, we leverage an electronic observer where we have a map that's essentially showing the pilot on the ground where all the other hazards and aircraft are in the airspace around them. And that's the service that Vantis provides then, is that beyond visual line of sight. And so getting the exemption with our partner Avionics really meant that the system and the services that Vantis provides not only, are what North Dakota thinks is going to be the
Mhm.
standard, but it's what the FAA agrees is the standard as well. And so it sets the bar of, okay, this is what we're on the right track. Now we're going to get more operators on it and get them the beyond visual line of sight flights as well.
And this is an electronic map that the pilot
Yes.
has in front of
Yep.
them.
Yeah. So if you're familiar with traditional aviation, where you have your MFD, your moving map display, where you see your own ship, your little airplane, and then everything else that's in the sky. Typically, it's ADS-B related. That's what
Mhm.
it looks like. It's very very similar to that. The difference is we're not limited to just ADS-B. We get both, uh, uh, primary and secondary, which is a fancy way of saying any aircraft that's out there that's sending out their signal. We have those, but then we also have those that aren't sending out their signal. Your farmer, that's got his little J3 Cub that doesn't even have an electrical system. We're ensuring that we can pick up and detect where he's at, so that when an operation is going on in the airspace, that we can avoid him and he can go through the airspace safely.
That's some insane technology to be able to pick up both of
I
those.
know, right? So
Yeah.
that's where radars and sensors and the system performance requirements that we have are critical to ensuring aviation safety. That we keep the NAS as open, as efficient, and as safe as it exists today.
So are you hoping that this really improves something like package delivery, like maybe like organ transplant, maybe, I mean, the sky, like we've said, the sky's the limit for something like this. What is your hope for something like this?
My hope. I love the idea of getting my Amazon packages in 2 days. I definitely do. Um, but my hope is actually more to enable more on the public safety, public mission set realm. The drone as a first responder is a wonderful mission set. But luckily here in North Dakota, we don't have a lot of 911 calls that come in. And
Thank
so
God.
yeah, right. The blueprint that we are working very closely actually with the city of Grand Forks and Grand Forks Fire Department is how do you enable a drone to be a city asset, a tool in the toolbox that when a 911 call comes in, it can go out and it can be the first responder, the first on the scene and provide that information back to your emergency services. Great. But now, how can that drone also be utilized for city engineering, for public works, for a whole wide variety of mission sets? So that drone is just a little worker bee that's going and doing anything and everything it can do, and really, making that city a much safer city. Much more services in that city, and really delivering value to the citizens. Um,
Mhm.
we don't have it solved yet, but we're making some really great work with like I said, Grand Forks Fire Department and the city of Grand Forks. We have a couple of drones that we're building out the blueprint. We're getting some new, waivers and regulations and approvals, and yeah, that's the mission set. And we're hoping to also, start pushing that story out there a little bit more, because just like Vantis is building a blueprint for infrastructure,
Mhm.
we think this can be the blueprint for a lot of cities that are looking at UAS
Absolutely.
technology and are struggling to justify the cost. Because there are a lot of rural cities in America that,
Mhm.
yes, they would love to use this drone as a first responder, but the return on investment just isn't there because,
Oh, yeah,
again, they are
that's a huge part of it right now. I mean,
right.
cost is a huge barrier to entry for anything UAS related at the moment.
So, how do we really prove out that there's a lot of other economic impact than just those emergency situations? How can that drone be utilized for emergency and non-emergency and deliver that value to a city? Because now you build that as your economic, justification, and you have a much better, rationale and use case. And I think there's a fundamental blueprint that we're building here in Grand Forks that will scale to a lot of other communities.
Well, as we close out, do you have a call to action to any states you haven't talked to? Have you not
Ah,
talked to any states and you're like, hey, whatever state you may be thinking of, like Hawaii, I don't know. I
oh,
want to
I'll
work
take
with you.
Hawaii. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to work with you. I think that this could be a perfect partnership. Is there any state that you're
The
building for?
calls to action. I'm looking at you, Oklahoma. I'm looking at you, Michigan, because I know what they're doing, and I think they got some great solutions and great products there. There's other states real close behind though that we know we can help each other more together. So Illinois, Virginia, New York, Ohio, Florida, Texas. Yeah, call us up. Let us know how we can help, because we're here. We know we're leading this, but we don't want to lead it alone. We know that we bring the solution when we start bringing the nationwide solution. So don't miss out. Call us up and, and figure out how to get on board.
Well, thank you so much, Erin,
Yeah.
for talking with me. That was so interesting and fascinating, and I'm just so excited. When you have new announcements, you can feel free to come back on and talk about them. We can get the word out together about the progress of the test site and about Vantis.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me.
If you have any topics or suggestions for future episodes, or if you have any questions for our guest Erin Roesler, you can contact me, angelswings.jillian@gmail.com. That's ANGELSWINGS.JILLIAN@gmail.com. I'll see you later.